While the global creative economy consists of arts and crafts of various forms, but Africa is not capitalizing on this market, currently holding less than 1% of it. Now, joining us now to explain how Africa can unlock the full potential of the continent's creative industries is Chai Molay, who's the Chief Executive and co-founder of Mobi Changa Limited, as well as Sylvia Anam, or rather Ayman, who's a researcher and consultant specializing in strategic planning for creative industries. Thank you so much for joining us, to the two of you both. First of all, I want to take a look at what the products are. We talk about African creative arts. What kind of products does that consist of? Chai, let's start off with you.
Sure. Well, the product that I manage is M-Changa. M-Changa is a mobile fundraising product that allows you to start and manage a fundraiser end-to-end all over SMS. What M-Changa leverages is it leverages your personal connections to allow you to build out a fundraiser, and it leverages common African technology in terms of SMS to allow you to receive payments via mobile money.
Sylvia, I'd like to touch on that with you. Chai, they did mention some SMS as well as ICT services, but I would actually think you'd be talking about African pots and, you know, some kind of art form.
Mm-hmm. Yes, of course, Africa can be successful on many levels. For example, if you look at current export statistic of African creative goods, we see that Africa is quite successful in design, for example, fashion design, but also in arts, crafts, in carpets. And there is a rising interest also for African advertising services and also architectural services.
Chai, let's delve into that just a little bit deeper. What kind of trends would you say you're seeing in the market currently with regard to African creative goods?
Well, essentially, African creative growth suffers from a couple of situations. One is the ability or the formalization of funding for these businesses. So what we're finding is that very often artists and people involved in the creative industry are actually bootstrapping in order to fund their businesses. And this is where technology fits in, because in Africa we have mobile money and we have great family networks and extended family networks. So it is trying to incorporate this culture to create a funding opportunity for the African businesses.
Sylvia, your thoughts on the funding? I would presume that if African arts and crafts is such a key area for growth economically for the whole continent, then why aren't we seeing more funders coming to the fore from either the private or the public sector?
This is a difficult question to be solved, because we have to be aware about the structure of the creative industries. So it's not like investing in a sort of a big industry where you install big infrastructures and then you have 3,000 workers employed. If you invest in creative industries, you work with very small, tiny businesses, and the whole related policy for funding and for supporting these industries has to be developed in a specific manner which is completely different from current economic policy support measures.
Sylvia, let's delve into that just a little bit deeper. You mentioned that it is small businesses that the funders would have to work with. What kind of proposed solution do you suggest?
In a way to take it up. Yeah, that means we must see that creative industries is a big opportunity, but it's also a challenge. So in a way, we have to take it up. We have to take seriously, for example, creative and artistic education in schools, so that we have future consumers. We have to find a way to provide a suitable business surrounding for these businesses. And we have to find ways also to support export and internationalization in the field. And this means a whole policy has to be developed around this growing sector in order to benefit best out of it.
Chai, you're an entrepreneur and someone who must have dealt with some funding issues with regard to starting up Mobi Changa. How did you come about with establishing that organization, and why?
What we were trying to achieve with M-Changa is we noticed that there was a gap in the Kenyan market. We know that Kenya is a world leader in mobile money and in mobile technologies, but there was a big gap in the market when it came to something that Kenyans do every day, which was give. Giving in terms of the family, and giving in terms of the extended family and for business. So M-Changa was really was really conceived to fill this gap in the market. Now, Mchanga as a product, we received seed funding in a more formal way. We had an angel investor that invested $35,000 in our startup about a year and a half ago. But this is just one way of funding. But we really believe that there's an alternative way of funding. There's the formal way that I just mentioned, but there's also a way that you could leverage your networks to create another funding opportunity.
You mentioned there that you managed to get some angel funding and investing rather for
Sure.
your establishment. But what would you say the entrepreneurial spirit is like with regard to African goods as well as services? Are we seeing enough individuals taking the bull by their horns and establishing their own organizations?
Sure, I think so. Kenya and Africa at large is mostly informal. Most of people in Africa are not in banks or in more formal positions. People are entrepreneurs in Africa. So this is something that we do already. We're already primed for this. So this is the situation.
Sylvia, Chai's just mentioned there that naturally there are people who are interested, people are starting up their own businesses, but is there a market in Africa in particular for people who are interested in our African goods and services?
Mm-hmm. I'm convinced that there is a market and that there are good opportunities. So, of course, it's always the obligation of each entrepreneur to look for its market. And if we see that so many small creative businesses are coming up in Africa, so they have a market, otherwise they just would not exist. And in addition, of course, there is a huge potential with this whole tendency of a growing middle class. We see everywhere in the world there is a big middle class. There is also very good development of the creative industries. And in addition, of course, Africa is still a very important tourism destination where also potential consumers are coming to the market, are here and can be addressed. And I think what is offered on the continent is a very interesting, wide field of excellent creative goods and services.
But Sylvia, just on that, in the introduction to this interview, we did mention that Africa only holds 1% of the creative goods and services field in South Africa. What can we do to really unlock the growth that is there?
Yes, to work for a clear framework, to invest also in clear business strategies, to see the external markets also. So in a way there are many ways to support the industries, also to make them more visible, to create platforms, to invest in public relations. So many possibilities to go ahead and to enlarge market shares of the African goods.
Chai, as an entrepreneur, what would you say the take-up to your products as well as offerings have been, given the fact that you really need to market Africa rather strongly? People always think of us as the dark continent where there isn't much economic growth. So what challenges have you had to overcome there?
Well, the challenges have been surprisingly few. Thanks to the story of mobile money, generally driven by M-Pesa and Vodafone in Kenya, there's been a certain hype created in the local ecosystem, especially when it comes to tech. We're finding that in Kenya there's a lot of business tech incubators, and there's a lot of attention in this particular sector in Kenya. So as a product, as a mobile product, as a virtual product, there was no real problems with the uptake of this type of technology, as Kenyans and East Africans have gotten used to this.
And Chai, just with regard to skills development, is skills a real shortage for you and your operation and your company?
No, it's not. In Kenya, again, we have a very good entrepreneurial spirit, and it's amazing how most of the people that actually work in the mobile industry are not formally trained. They haven't come through the university systems or the technology schools. Most developers in Kenya are doing this on their own and online and on the internet.
Sylvia, just taking a look at our international counterparts, how would you say we compare? We've got Chai, who's a wonderful example of how really, taking the bull by the horns and starting up your own foundation and leading it and helping it create jobs within your region there. But how would you say we compare on an international scale overall?
I think what is really amazing is this entrepreneurial spirit. This is something I think which is a real growth potential for the future of the whole African continent. If I compare that, for example, with the European situation, we have severe difficulties to convince young Europeans to become entrepreneurs. They are much more oriented towards a career somewhere in a company instead of creating their own company. In our context, much more complex to get skilled people taking that entrepreneurial risk also. So in a way, I think this is one of the real advantages for the 21st century successful development of the African continent.
Just one more question to the two of you, but Chai, let's start off with you. How do you view African creative goods and services as an investment vehicle?
I believe there's unbounded scope for African creative goods, especially in terms of monetizing these types of activities. In Africa, we are doing this everywhere, and we're doing this all the time. What is really the challenge is formalizing some of those structures to allow investment that can come in and really promote these activities.
Sylvia, your thoughts?
I think this is a general. Yes,
Sylvia,
I think this is a general.
Your thoughts, Sylvia.
I think this is I think this is a general problem to get investors for the creative businesses, because it's very difficult to catch their potential in figures as you might be used to do it for other businesses. And so maybe new models have to be found in order to get more investment into the sector. So we talk about also different forms of crowdfunding, more formalized crowdfunding, for example, when the projects are getting bigger, cooperations with banks, but also with crowdfunding structures. So this might be a way to go further, but it's still in its early steps, I think not only in Africa, but also in Europe.